Anna Foster reporting there. Well, joining me now is Dr. Andreas Krieg, a military risk analyst and an associate professor at King's College London. Thank you very much for joining us on the 9, Dr. Krieg. If we can just return to events in Gaza for the time being, is a ground invasion now inevitable, do you think?
Well, there have been some rumours today that this ground offensive might be too risky and that Israel might call it off if the hostages get released. I think if you look at the very vague military objectives that Israel has set out and the lack of strategic objectives nonetheless, it's quite clear that there is no real way forward without a ground invasion. If you want to eradicate the capabilities of Hamas on the ground and underground, you'll have to go in with ground forces, and it's going to be very messy. But it seems like the risk appetite in Israel is unprecedented, at least in modern history.
So from a military perspective then, what are their objectives, do you think?
Well, it's very speculative, and I think that's the whole problem. I mean, with all the killing, with all the dying on both sides, particularly now in Gaza, the big question is, what is the ultimate end game that Israel is pursuing? And nobody can really say that, because there's not going to be a military solution to this conflict. There's no way you're going to eradicate Hamas purely through military means. So you need to have a political strategic end, which, as Ehud said in one of your packages, is about re-engaging with the Palestinians in a political dialogue. And that doesn't seem to be something that Netanyahu wants to do. Everything that we're hearing now is that first, you have 300,000 mobilized Israeli soldiers. They are planning to go in and eradicate Hamas, however that's going to look like. The problem with that is, though, the eradication of Hamas's military capabilities is going to happen in an urban environment, where Hamas is not just operating on the surface, but most importantly under the surface, with an extensive tunnel system that will make it very, very complicated and near impossible to completely take out all the different capabilities that Hamas has, and also taking out all their different fighters. It's an environment where Israel has only limited knowledge and intelligence. They have very good intelligence in the air and above surface, but very bad intelligence below the surface. And you're sending in basically military soldiers, young soldiers as well, in an environment that they don't understand, that they don't know, that is going to be very risky, and in an environment that Hamas has already prepared as a trap. An environment that is somewhat looking like something of a fortress that Hamas has been building for nearly 2 decades.
And we were just hearing from our correspondent in Lebanon just a short time ago. If Hezbollah are waiting to get involved as well, could Israel be fighting a war on multiple fronts?
That's the great concern. I think that's the great concern for everyone in the international community right now, because for the most part, at the moment, we're looking at humanitarian suffering, particularly in Gaza, which is obviously horrendous, but it's still a fairly localized conflict. It could easily flare up on the northern border of Israel with Hezbollah, which has far more wider and broader capabilities than Hamas, with strategic depth that would reach all part of Israel, with technological sophisticated weapon systems, as well as much more sophisticated armored brigades that could move into Israel, which will make it very difficult for Israel to sustain the war effort for an indefinite period of time. And then you might have a third and fourth front along the Syrian border, and potentially even within the West Bank, because there are also a lot of militias there that have been highly armed and trained to operate against Israel if it becomes an all-out war. And I think that's the great concern that Israelis have, apart from the operational risk of moving into Hamas territory in Gaza, is that you're basically risking a multi-front war that Israel will not be able to fight on its own for an extensive period of time.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on the 9 this evening to give us your insight. That's Dr. Andreas Krieg, a military risk analyst and an associate professor at King's College London. Many thanks.